Okay, we're going to do our sample seam for our shorts, and this is a little bit different than what we have done before. We're going to do a double stitched seam, and then we are going to zigzag it and trim it. Although we're not going to trim on the sample, we are going to trim on your shorts just so that you don't have quite so much bulk. So I'm going to take this last pin out, and I'm going to move my pattern off to the side. And if you notice, I put my tape in the middle of my pieces. I don't want it along the edges because I don't want to sew on it. Sewing on tape is just no fun. With something that's this small, you always want to just use only maybe about 3 pins. I always do the 2 ends first, and then I'm going to go to the middle. And I didn't move anything. These things were naturally already right sides together because that's how we cut out our fabric. So I didn't have to switch anything around, which was kind of nice. But you do want to make sure that your tape or your wrong side is on the outside. Okay? To get it ready, you should have 3 pins in it like that. Okay? And then before we actually start sewing, I'm going to talk a little bit about the foot. So let me zoom in here and take a look at a close-up of the foot. All right? So we have done projects in the past where we use the outside edge of our foot. We're not going to do that this time. You're going to actually use the edge of your blue tape. And if you did a drawstring bag with me in 7th grade, you would have used this edge right here as your guide. That's what we're going to do for this particular seam. So we're going to start there by doing a straight stitch at 5/8 of an inch. And in order to do this, first of all, we always want to, before we ever start sewing, is we want to check our stitching on a scrap of fabric. And we do that to make sure that we have our machine threaded correctly. Because there's nothing as not fun as going along sewing and you don't have your machine threaded correctly and you did all that work and nothing happened. So I stopped, I put needle up, presser foot up, I'm pulling off to the left, and I'm going to clip my threads. And I'm going to check the front and the back to make sure that it looks pretty much the same on both sides. And now I'm ready to do that first line of stitching. Okay. It's always a good idea when you are starting a line of stitching to have your threads in the back. I actually hold mine in my hand when I get started so that they don't make a big thread blob underneath. And I'm moving my fabric under the needle about 1/4 of an inch before I put the presser foot down. I'm going to take my pin out and I'm going to drop my needle down. And whenever I am sewing, I always want to make sure that my fingers are away from the needle. I don't want them right on top of the needle. I never want to put my finger on the foot while I'm sewing because that could have some real disastrous consequences. And so I'm going to keep them right about here. I don't have anything to hold on to over here, but I'm going to keep this hand in front. Let me back up just a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to keep this hand in front to help me guide. This is where I'm focusing. I am not looking at the needle. I'm not looking at anything else. I'm focusing right there, and I am going to stop and take out every pin. So hold on to my threads when I start. I'm going to do a couple stitches forward. And remember, you can do this at the really slow speed if you want to so that it doesn't get away from you. I'm now going to back stitch all the way to the edge. So I did 2 forward, but I'm going to have to go back farther than 2. Okay? Now again, I'm going to hold on to my threads just because I don't want that to get jumbled up underneath there. And I only hold until we get, a couple of stitches in. Do this at a speed that is comfortable for you. Again, I'm watching right here. I'm not looking at the needle. I just want to make sure that those 2 edges are touching. I'm almost to this pin, so I'm going to stop and take it out. And whenever you stop to take a pin out, take your foot completely off the pedal. I just kind of lift mine up in the air, but I don't want to accidentally make it go whenever I am fiddling around the needle, because that, again, could be disastrous. All right? And I'm going to go a little faster because I have been doing this for a long time. But again, you go as slow as you need to go. You do not get extra points for speed. Okay? I'm going to stitch all the way to the end. And then I'm going to hit the back stitch button. And I'm going to go about 4 or 5 back. And then I'm going to go forward. Okay? Needle up, presser foot up, pull off to the left. and you want to clip your threads. And I clip mine with the thread cutter on the side, but then I always come back in and clip them shorter with a pair of snips or scissors, because that is something that you get graded on, is how close you get those threads cut. You should not have a big nasty mess on the inside of your project. So this is 5/8 of an inch, and if you want to check for sure, you can put your thing on the 5/8 of an inch. Mine's pretty darn close. No, I don't even, there we go. I didn't have my seam gauge right. So there's mine, and I've got it set on 5/8 of an inch, and it's pretty darn close. It should be parallel to that cut edge, and that's the first part of your sample.